What if the world you knew is already gone? The war involving Iran is no longer just another regional conflict. It has quietly and rapidly reshaped the global balance of power. And according to analysts, what we are witnessing today may be the birth of an entirely new world order. At first glance, the conflict seemed predictable. Rising tensions, military escalation, and familiar alliances taking sides. But as the war unfolded, something unexpected happened. There was no clear winner. Instead, the real outcome lies beneath the surface. The Middle East, long considered one of the most volatile regions on Earth, has entered a new phase of uncertainty. Power structures that once held the region together are now shifting. Countries are rethinking alliances, recalculating risks, and preparing for a future that looks very different from the past. But this is not just a regional story. This is global. The United States, historically seen as the dominant superpower, is now facing increasing pressure. The Iran conflict has exposed the limits of its influence, especially in a world where multiple crises demand attention at the same time. Military strength alone is no longer enough. The war has stretched resources, tested alliances, and raised difficult questions about how far American power can truly reach in today's complex geopolitical landscape. Meanwhile, cracks are beginning to show within Western unity. NATO, once a symbol of collective strength, is facing internal challenges. Different nations have different priorities, and the Iran war has only amplified those divisions. What was once a unified front now appears more fragile than ever. And while the West struggles to maintain cohesion, other global players are watching carefully. China in particular stands in a unique position, rather than direct confrontation. Beijing is observing, learning, and quietly expanding its influence. With the United States focused elsewhere, China has more room to strengthen its economic and strategic presence across key regions. This is not a sudden rise but a calculated one. At the same time, Russia's role in the global order appears to be shifting. Once a major force in geopolitical conflicts, it now faces increasing limitations, both economically and militarily. The balance it once helped maintain is no longer as stable as before. But perhaps the most important transformation is not about any single country. It's about the system itself. The Iran war is accelerating changes that were already underway, changes in how wars are fought, how alliances are formed, and how power is measured. Energy security is being redefined. Supply chains are being restructured. Technology is becoming a central battlefield, from cyber warfare to advanced defense systems. And proxy conflicts are becoming more complex, involving not just nations, but networks of influence that operate beyond traditional borders. This is no longer a world dominated by one superpower. It is a world of multiple competing forces, a multipolar reality. And in this new world, uncertainty becomes the only constant. So what happens next? Ceasefire talks may bring temporary relief. Diplomatic efforts may slow the escalation. But the deeper transformation cannot be reversed. Because this war didn't just change borders. It changed the rules of the game. The question now is not who wins or loses. The question is, who adapts fastest to this new global order? Because in a world defined by shifting power, emerging alliances, and constant uncertainty, standing still may be the greatest risk of war. The Iran war may have paused, if not finally ended. Iran has lost its leaders, half of its missile and drone stocks, and a substantial part of its military and civil infrastructure. Thousands of Iranians, a majority of them combatants, have been killed or injured. The US has lost a few aircraft, more to friendly fire than to enemy action. Some Americans, Israelis, and Arabs have been killed. Countries of the Middle East have suffered damage to their water and oil infrastructure. Israel has suffered building damage, deaths, and injuries.
The human and material losses sustained by Iran are much. Such damage is the natural outcome of any armed conflict. There are intangible losses on both sides. The fissure between the Trump administration and Europe, already substantial, has widened. NATO members did not extend support to the US and largely remained on the sidelines, greater than those suffered by the rest. Iran has burned its bridges with many countries of the Middle East, and reconciliation may have to await regime change. The image that has emerged of the regime is that it absorbed the beating passively, retaliating very little against the US and preferring to strike its Middle Eastern allies instead. Iranians will henceforth have less faith in the regime's capability to defend the country's assets. By vetoing the Hormuz resolution at the UN and openly supplying weapons, explosive precursor chemicals, and real-time intelligence to Iran during the war, Russia and China took an undeniably partisan position. They had already lost Syria to Turkey. Now they have lost the rest of the Middle East. The Shia-Sunni divide is now a wider geopolitical one: Sunni with the West, Shia with Russia, China, and North Korea, while India retained its commercial ties with Iran and Russia without causing much annoyance to Trump. Pakistan may be questioned by the Saudis in the coming days for ignoring their defense pact and remaining neutral.
It will be interesting to see who says what at the next Organization of Islamic Cooperation (OIC) summit, if and when it is held. Russian and Chinese exports of air defense equipment have taken 3 hits in quick succession. The brief Indo-Pakistani conflict, the successful capture of Venezuela's Nicolas Maduro, and now the Iran war have all demonstrated America's capability of neutralizing these defenses. China has clearly been selling outdated equipment. Global buyers will be warier in the future. The effectiveness of the Hormuz, straight as a choke point, will worry China about the similar potential of the Strait of Malacca, which straddles Malaysia and Indonesia, and through which a substantial portion of its oil imports pass. India is creating an island sentry post near the strait. Despite the US's diminished weapon stocks, it appears that the lessons of this war will, for the time being, deter China from moving on Taiwan. The biggest gainer has been Israel. The US is now visibly watching its back. There are murmurs that Benjamin Netanyahu pushed Trump into this war. Trump is not a pushover, but there was certainly a nudge. For the duration of the war, Israel had a free hand in Lebanon, inflicting substantial losses on Hezbollah and gaining ground in the south. This will help the Beirut government further marginalize Hezbollah and regain effective control of the country. Trump has reinforced his image as a bully taking on the Iranian neighborhood thug, a role he clearly relishes. The rescue of crews from a hostile country during the war has enhanced the image of the US. The significant losses suffered during the rescue operation will be remembered as the price the US is willing to pay for each service member. There were such instances in the Vietnam War too. The ability of the US war machine to operate far from its homeland and remain largely unmolested is now undisputed. The battlefield synergy of the US and Israeli armed forces has also been fully established. Middle Eastern countries must now remain aligned with the US, despite popular sentiment to the contrary. Israel, too, will be part of the bandwagon, and the fading Abraham Accords may be back in the limelight. India, despite its bonhomie with Iran and Russia during the war, has affirmed its presence in the region by opening its doors wide to Israel. Technological and military cooperation between the two nations is widening rapidly. In this situation, distancing India from the US will remain a pipe dream for China. Russia's oil gains from a choked Hormuz and elevated prices are somewhat offset by increased Ukrainian drone attacks on Russian oil facilities. In this brief war, Ukraine has gained monetarily and in prestige by successfully marketing its low-cost interceptor drones to the Middle East. Even if China starts offering cheaper clones, the reputational damage to Chinese defense equipment sustained across recent conflicts means Ukraine will remain in this business for the foreseeable future. And while there is no clear winner of the Iran war, the early upshots have already changed the world in many consequential ways.